Hello there, Nebulous Scholar here. Now, looking at my channel, you may or may not know this already. I'm someone who enjoys a tough yet fair challenge. So long as I can feel myself learning and improving with each attempt, I will throw myself at a challenge as many times as it takes to finally overcome it. Naturally, this means something like the Souls series and other Souls-likes are perfect for me, but it wasn't always the case. I'm sure you've seen and heard many people talk about how Dark Souls saved their lives, inspired them to tackle challenges in life without giving up or something else to that effect. Basically, they had a moment where the Souls formula clicked for them, resonated with them. But for me, I didn't reach that enlightenment with Dark Souls itself. When I realized this, it made me curious. If not Dark Souls, what was it that finally clicked? That was the spark that let me know that I would love these games. As far as I can remember, I've always loved a good challenge, and as a longtime Dragon Ball Z fan, I think I can attribute the inspiration to triumph through training and improvement to good old Goku. But while I could tap into the mindset, I never really quite appreciated it. My first contact with the Souls-like was in fact the very first Dark Souls, specifically the Prepare to Die edition on PC. Now, just to set the stage, I vaguely recall reconvening at a friend's place after we had just seen the first Hobbit movie in theaters. There, he hit me with the question, "Do you know Dark Souls?" I didn't. Looking back at the time frame, Dark Souls was still a pretty new game, having just gotten its PC release. While it was making waves back then, the game just hadn't caught my attention, and of course, I didn't even know Demon Souls existed either. As someone completely unfamiliar with what he was asking, let me tell you, my friend gave the worst elevator pitch for the game he could have ever given. He sat me down, had me make a night, and sent me on my way. I'll be honest, his advice made that experience thoroughly forgettable, and it's been a couple years, so I'm missing a couple major details. See, I don't remember my journey through the asylum or even defeating the asylum demon. I don't recall stumbling into Bone Town and getting shanked by skelly enemies above my level. I do recall wanting to dual wield my longsword and my broken sword hilt, but power stancing wasn't invented yet. My friend did mention that it wouldn't work, but he didn't elaborate. Mentioned something about poise, though. I do vividly remember my first encounter with a Black Knight. I also recall reading a message recommending backstabs. Needless to say, the first backstab wasn't enough. I have a memory of running and trying to fight face to face in a more open arena, only for my friend to tell me it wouldn't work. The Black Knight had too much poise. No, he still didn't elaborate. After getting thoroughly stomped by the big bad knight, my friend gave me a tip. Get a bow, some arrows, and shoot him in the face, from a safe perch far away. He led me to the undead merchant. I purchased the equipment and followed my friend's instructions to lure the Black Knight and shoot him from out of reach. The knight went down with no problem, but it did take a good amount of time to chip away his health. He does have a lot for early game. Needless to say, this was painfully boring, and I felt no sense of accomplishment afterward. I don't even remember if the Black Knight dropped his sword or not, but I feel like that would have left an impression. After that, I made my way to the Taurus Demon, or my friend spoiled using the tower's ladder to plunge attack the boss to death. That's about as far as I can remember. Pretty sure that was the end of the experience. I went home after that, and for the longest time, forgot that I even played it. To be completely fair, I know many people, myself included, would say that I was robbed of the actual Dark Souls experience. After all, I was heavily guided and even told cheese strategies from the get-go. I never had the chance to experience the struggle and learn on my own. Out of curiosity, I watched a couple of best friends on YouTube play the Nioh demo back when it came out. I thought the game looked tough, but really cool. Then one of them mentioned how it was pretty much the same as Dark Souls. I didn't know it yet, but the first flame was lit.
And look, if you hit the options button, it gets even more familiar. Options. Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just like a Souls game, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm happy to finally have another AAA Souls game.
I
so.
want there to be competition. I really, because From Software's been in a position like with Monster Hunter and Capcom for a while. It's like they're the only people who really make
And nobody's fighting it.
and there's like one bad knockoff.
Yeah,
And that's it.
basically.
Of Dark Souls on their channel.
You don't need to do anything.
What?
Just take a look. Tarkus! Tarkus!
No.
Tarkus!
No way!
Tarkus!
No way! Wait, come on, really?
Tarkus!
Oh!
Tarkus!
It was so thoroughly entertaining, and I was intrigued by the lore, that I wanted to give it a shot. To merit, I enjoyed it so vicariously that when I did eventually play the game, I already felt familiar with the map and navigation, making exploration easy. Anyway, I asked a friend, a different friend from that first one, who had much more experience with Souls, for a recommendation. Well, at the time, Bloodborne was on sale, so he encouraged me to give that a shot. It's faster than Dark Souls, which is something I thought I would enjoy, seeing as I also love stylish action games like Devil May Cry. This may have been a mistake. I don't know if it was because of the Victorian horror aesthetic, the pressure of finally playing one of these punishingly hard games, something else, or everything at once, but I spent the first and only 2 hours of my first time playing it just wreathed in sheer terror. I didn't want to die, to lose my blood echoes, to fight everything again. I should note, I do also have a real irrational fear of getting lost. I'm a lot better with this now, but back when I was getting overwhelmed by the multitude of intertwining Yarnum alleys, my nervousness was preventing me from establishing a mental map. I wanted to level, get stronger, make things easier. Eventually, I found a madman's knowledge, warped back to the doll, and threw my points into levels. I ended the singular session by finding and fighting the cleric beast, defeating it with the help of a summoned Gascoigne, then realizing I was sitting at a dead end and would need to keep exploring. My first, well, actually second, experience with the Souls-like ended on a rather poor note, but I was still hoping to get into the series. I already acknowledged that it wasn't the game at fault, it was my own inadequacies. I planned to get back to Bloodborne at some point, but now is not that time. Also around that time, Dark Souls Remastered released, allowing me to play it without relying on my aged PS3. I mean, it still works even now, but I've just had it for a really long time. Unfortunately, I didn't have a strong enough computer to play it on PC yet, so I was stuck playing on consoles. Now, I had already seen a full playthrough of Dark Souls, so I figured with prior knowledge, I could tackle the game with more success. Venturing forth on my PS4, success was had, yes, but the click still hadn't happened. I started off as a pyromancer. I recall suffering an intense dread when approaching the Capra Demon. See, I had heard it was a run killer, a tough foe that crushes the spirit of those wanting to challenge Dark Souls. Looking back, that was an overly dramatic way to put it, but there's a certain truth to it. It's such an unfairly skewed fight, and I don't blame anyone for actually just quitting there. But I didn't. I fought it, and I won. After the fight, my hands were shaking from a mix of adrenaline and mild anxiety. Looking back on it, I might call myself pathetic for shaking to such an encounter, but I hadn't reached enlightenment yet. I continued playing, eventually beating Ornstein and Smo, with some assistance from Solaire. I ended up beating Sif and the Four Kings before life had different plans and I put the game down. Now, for some reason, when that happens and my gaming combo streak is broken, I find it hard to return to a game I was partway through. It's happened to me with several other games, unfortunately. Anyway, that ended my PS4 run of Dark Souls. That hollow would be forever trapped in the darkness of the Tomb of the Giants. Despite everything I had gone through at that point, I still couldn't say I had felt the spark, that moment that told me Souls-likes were where it's at. Maybe it was because I already knew a lot of the game's secrets. Maybe my stat allocation wasn't tending towards the build I truly wanted to play as. Maybe I just cheated myself out of the true Dark Souls experience by not going in naturally. Over a year later, I happened across something while browsing the PlayStation Store. A demo. Code Vein's demo, to be exact. I had heard nothing about Code Vein, but when I saw it, I thought it looked cool and anime as all hell. When I tried it out, I quickly discovered that it was actually a Souls-like. I was surprised, but that fact wouldn't deter me. Rather, I was excited by the revelation. I played through what would be the main game's tutorial and had fun, but it definitely didn't feel like enough. Luckily, the demo had a bonus dungeon for me to challenge. It boiled down to a set of winding corridors with hidden items and challenges, with the goal of finding the keys to open the boss room. Relatively basic, but an appetizing setup befitting of a demo. Little did I know, this was it. I explored the entirety of that dungeon until I opened the door to the boss, Queen's Knight. To this day, Queen's Knight is the boss that remains at the top of my Code Vein list. In retrospect, Code Vein front-loaded their boss quality, because Queen's Knight, I found, was only surpassed in quality by the Skull King in the main game. Either way, Queen's Knight's relentless yet clear patterns and notable difficulty kept me on my toes. I fought and felt the challenge. To my surprise and delight, I found myself learning the boss's moveset. It didn't have attacks that were unfair. It had attacks that needed to be read and avoided in certain ways. The shield bash was almost too quick to react to, but dodging and positioning myself to the knight's right side would avoid the attack entirely. Dodge forward into the lance thrust to avoid the attack and be in counterattack range. Roll away from the spinning wing slash to avoid damage while staying near the boss when it landed. Recognize the teleporting combo's rhythm and mind my positioning to handle the Blood Cross Desperation move. I died over and over, but with each run, I would work on a new move to learn, internalize, and counterplay. I managed my weapon and power loadout to find the playstyle I wanted. I ended up using a bayonet to keep light and mix in opportunistic spell shots for big damage while landing frequent quick weapon attacks. Mobility, positioning, and stamina management became things I would be aware of, while identifying openings became instinct. As both a point of regret and a point of pride, I later realized I never actually upgraded my weapons and armor before fighting the boss, depending solely on my poorly scaling stats. But eventually, I triumphed over the boss. The game, the soul, clicked. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to buy and play the full game at release, but I did get around to it eventually. Compared to Dark Souls, I'll say Code Vein was a much easier experience, considering they give you a partner NPC to assist, heal, and split aggro for you. In turn, that does make Code Vein a good entry title, a sort of baby's first Souls-like, if you will. Not that it makes the game worse or have less quality, but with allies that can revive you, there's a certain degree of handholding that isn't in other Souls-likes. I'll also say that my previous experience with the harder parts of Dark Souls helped me to acclimate quickly. When it came to enjoying and engaging with exploration, finding new blood codes, and thus new powers, was a strong driving force. If my skill primers on the channel didn't give it away, I'm a glutton for collecting powers and spells. As mentioned before, the only standout bosses to me were Queen's Knight and Skull King, with the rest ranging from okay to frustrating. During the entire game, while I did die often, not once did I fail my corpse run and lose my haze, which led to me having an extreme surplus by the time I reached the final boss. Despite being my first fully completed Souls experience, I still have plenty of criticisms of several of Code Vein's design choices, but I won't go into detail here. I will say that overall, it was a memorable and defining experience for me. With that, the flame was properly kindled, and I was excited with the announcement of Sekiro. Little did I know, I would find second spark. But apparently, because I can't do things normally, this spark didn't happen with my first attempt at Sekiro. After about 10 hours, I had only reached the Blazing Bull and Drunkard Juzo. I managed to struggle my way through the various early mini-bosses and Gyobu, but I will fully admit that I did not understand what the game wanted of me. Enter Diet Sekiro, more well known as Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Calling it Diet Sekiro might sound like an insult, but believe me, it's a term of endearment. Also, it's pretty true. In retrospect, Jedi Fallen Order isn't nearly as tightly designed as Sekiro, as I would later realize. Still, it had the right foundations. Apparently, putting a lightsaber in the force of my hands and telling me to parry everyone in the galaxy made more sense to me here than in Sekiro. Despite playing on Jedi Master from the very beginning, I found Jedi Fallen Order to be extremely forgiving in its combat and deflection timing. Maybe the sheer versatility of the force powers made the game a tad easier than expected, but I played through without incident, collecting every achievement in the game and feeling very satisfied on clearing it. By the way, my favorite boss in the game is Taron Malicos. I really felt like he challenged me, both on my lightsaber skills and mastery of the Force, enabling me to use my full kit. When it comes to a plain old lightsaber duel, the Ninth Sister is the best of the best, but as a Jedi wielding the Force, Malicos gets my vote. Anyway, with Jedi Fallen Order under my belt, almost a year since I started my hiatus, I went back to Sekiro. It was then I had a super genius level epiphany. If the game doesn't say it's unblockable, then I can block it. Astonishing, right? I know, it sounds dumb when said aloud, but regardless, if you have previous Souls experience, if you see an enemy winding up a huge attack, instinct says, you can't block this, get out of there. But this isn't the case. I left off at Juzo and Blazing Bull precisely because of their large, wild attacks that I assumed I needed to avoid. I mean, really, who thinks about parrying an animal? Turns out, standing my ground and properly defending is what I needed to be doing all of this time. Lady Butterfly was up next. I had faced down several dark side users. What threat was a magic old lady? Yeah, no, the magic old lady is way more dangerous. But her combo pressure really showed me the ferocity I would be dealing with in this game compared to Jedi Fallen Order. After a lot of struggle, I emerged the victor. Then, it was time for the click, the spark. Fighting up to, on top of, and through Ashina Castle, I was made to use every technique available for me to survive. Ashina Genichiro, a well-known roadblock and run killer. The first major test of the game, the one who asks you, can you Sekiro? Gen-chan was waiting for me. It took me 4 tries. I even almost cleared phase 2 on my first attempt. So, yes, I could Sekiro. I went on to clear the game 3 times over, each time with more confidence than the last. It granted me the same feeling that I had when I fought Queen's Knight. I learned to make use of every mechanic to counter my enemy's every move. I read patterns, gunned the flow of things, and overcame challenges time and time again. I always enjoyed pulling off parries and such in other games, but Sekiro really flavored that feeling into a rush that I love. You can probably even see it when I do deflections in other games. I don't have parry addiction and it's not a problem. The final battle against Ishin is one of the highest highs I've ever had the fortune of experiencing. The sheer exhilaration I felt upon finally beating him was so strong, I immediately went on to challenge the Gauntlet of Strength Divine Heir and beat Inner Genichiro on my first attempt. I'm just disappointed I never got it recorded. Regardless, from that moment, Sekiro solidified itself as my all-time favorite game and a standard I hope for other games to measure up to. A blessing and a curse. It goes without saying that I continue to chase that enjoyment I can get from challenging games with finely crafted mechanics. Since Sekiro, well, you can actually see most of my Souls-like experience on my channel. I've finally done a proper run of Dark Souls, Elden Ring and its DLC came out and were thoroughly completed. I've dabbled in Thymesia, Nobeta, Stellar Blade. Off recording, I have played Remnant and Remnant 2 co-opting with friends. I'll admit that, ironically, at the time of recording this, I have yet to do a playthrough of Nioh. Code Vein may have been the kindling that strengthened the flame, but my piqued interest in Nioh was the pilot light of my pursuits. I do promise to get to it though. I definitely owe it that much. But now, with both Code Vein 2 and Nioh 3 announced and coming out, I felt that now was a pretty good time to talk about this. In the end, I can't really say that Dark Souls saved my life. Instead, the reality was that the Dark Soul was always coded in my veins.